Welcome to the channel and to this deployment zone video. This is the show where I show you a unit that I painted recently that will be appearing in my deployment zone soon. So in front of you, you see a 5-man squad of Terminators. Terminators normally 75 points for 5 of them. There's a cyclone missile launcher and a chain fist here as well. Brings it up to 205 points, I believe. This guy, slightly converted, I'll just show you him for a second. Hacked off a power sword and added it to the side of his power fist, just for some extra coolness there. Yeah, they're nice. A favourite unit amongst the 40k community, first released in Space Hulk all those years ago, those chunky old Space Marines that you used to get, the Terminators used to get. These newer model sculpts came out about 3-4 years ago, much more dynamic poses, and the fluff around Terminators is just awesome. These are first company Marines, and they've got their Crux Terminatus. They've shown that they are skilled enough in battle to be given the honour of wearing tactical dreadnought armour. And anyone who's read a Horus Heresy novel knows that these things are unstoppable. They will hack their way through hordes and hordes and hordes of big beasties, and nothing can bring them down. Of course, in the game, they're not seem to be that competitive. There's far too many AP2 weaponry out there, rending weaponry out there, monstrous creatures weaponry out there. There's far too many things that can hurt a Terminator, and people have been screaming for some time, shouldn't they be toughness 5, or should they have feel no pain as stock, or maybe 2 wounds. Yeah, there are ways to make them more bestial, and you certainly won't see Terminators in competitive tournament lists because they're not seen to cut it, but I like them. I've always liked Terminators. I think we can all say that we like Terminators. Of course, Terminators come in different flavours now. There's Cataphractii Terminators with their 4-up invulnerable save rather than their 5-up invulnerable save, but Cataphractii Terminators, slow and purposeful. They can't run, they can't fire Overwatch. You can also bring your Assault Terminators with their 3-up invulnerable save if they bring in shields. Much more common sight because Assault Terminators are nasty. So why normal Terminators? What are their strengths? Why did I bother doing them? Well, Terminators, as you all know, they can deep strike, so they're a good disruption unit. You can drop them in the backfield. They've all got power fists, apart from the sergeant. He accepts the challenge, he dies, and then you've got a bunch of straight strength 8 attacks on the remaining Marines, and they all have 2 attacks base. So 3 times 4, you've got 12 power fist attacks on the charge when they charge in. Power fists are not to be sniffed at. With their loadout, instead of bringing a cyclone missile launcher, you can bring an assault cannon or heavy flamer, but you're looking at the cyclone missile launcher being probably the most cost effective, because then this thing's got a 48-inch range and you're reaching out and touching anyone any distance, and you can crack open armor with it quite effectively. So they're versatile. They can deep strike. They are nasty in close combat against non-close combat specialists. Close combat specialists will murder these guys because close combat specialists are close combat specialists. Terminators will chew through them. A big unit of Death Company will chew through them. Wraith Knights, monstrous creatures. Wraith Knights kill anything, but monstrous creatures will hurt these guys as well with all their AP2 attacks, but they can hurt monstrous creatures back again. They're not a dedicated assault unit. They are expensive at 175 point stock. They cannot sweep in advance. Terminators do not sweep in advance. And even though these are the shooty variant of Terminators, they are not shooty enough. Having a bunch of Stormbolters on Terminators is not going to cut it. You're always going to want to bring a heavy flamer or an assault cannon, or as I mentioned, the cyclone missile launcher to increase their shootiness. So what's the best way to run them? Well, the very best way to run them is stick them in a Storm Raven with a Dreadnought on the back of them, or chuck them in a Land Raider. That'll keep them safe from the AP2 shots and the anti-tank weaponry that is often aimed at Terminators. And while I'll deploy my Terminators on the table every day of the week and run them forward, sometimes deep striking them in, putting normal Terminators inside a Land Raider, putting normal Terminators inside a Storm Raven especially is a very good tactic, because then you can pick and choose who you're gonna fight. You can deep strike these guys in, but then you run the risk of deep strike mishap. Terminators can also deploy in drop pods if you want to negate the chance of deep strike mishap. You can bring a drop pod as a fast attack choice and stick your Terminators in it and then get these guys out. That'll give you an extra 35 points just to try and negate the chances of deep strike mishap. Or the very best way to run them, as I say, is stick them in a Storm Raven gunship. If these guys are coming out of a Storm Raven gunship, you can pick and choose who you wish to assault and when you wish to assault them. Storm Raven comes screaming in turn 2, turn 3, sometimes turn 4, which is nasty, but let's assume that the Storm Raven's coming in turn 2 or turn 3. Then you point it at the unit you want to kill in the next turn, and you won't be picking that Iron Arm Demon. You won't be picking that Wraith Knight. You will be picking some Marines dug down in cover. You will be picking those Honor Jejune Crawlers that have been tickling at you in the backfield. You will get to pick a Riptide that's been out on the fringe, that's been nagging at you and nagging at you. You can pick and choose the assault if you bring these guys in the Storm Raven gunship. So normal assault Terminators will cut the mustard if you get to deploy them properly. And another very good way to run them, which you don't see very often, but I've done quite a few times to quite a good effect, is actually deploy them on the table at the back somewhere, holding an objective with a Cyclone Missile Launcher guy. So let's say these guys are in that ruin and they're holding on to an objective for you. Cyclone Missile Launcher is firing out 2 shots at 48-inch range twice every single turn, bang, bang, bang. They become a very tough, very resilient Devastator squad with 2-shot missile launcher firing out. And it also means that your enemy who comes flying in to take that objective away from you has got 5 Terminators to deal with instead of just a Devastator squad with 2 missile launchers in the backfield. Suddenly the threat range they have, the secure range, the radius around them to punch back hard anything that comes a bit close to them is significant. So if you're considering just bringing a squad of 5 of them, consider living at the back sometimes, just sitting on an objective and scaring away anyone who wants to take that objective away from you. I would always recommend chucking on at least 1 Chain Fist with these guys, because Strength 8 versus Land Raiders is not a great, isn't going to end happily most of the time, but a Chain Fist gives you Armor Bane, so that's Strength 8 plus 2d6 Armor Pen at AP2. Means that with 1 Chain Fist in there, you're almost guaranteed Wrecking Face to some of the larger vehicles that they might choose to come up against. If you are considering deep striking these guys in, remember the rule of deep strike. And if you're unfamiliar with the rule of deep strike, it goes like this. Don't stick them in the middle of the table. Don't stick them in a place where most of your opponent's guns can light them up. Stick them off to one side. Stick them to the left flank or to the right flank. Don't worry about them getting into an assault in the next turn. Stick them to one side, and suddenly they become a big threat, and then start pushing forward and start threatening that flank. A threat radius is all about how far they can move, how far they can charge, and in turn 3 or turn 4 they should be quite easily close to the middle of the table where you want them to be. And they will be attracting a lot of firepower, which means that your opponent isn't shooting downrange at other things that you might want to protect. So if you deep strike the mid-table, you might as well paint kick me signs on them, because they're going to get kicked. If you're sticking a heavy flamer on them, don't deep strike them right next to the squad that you want to flame in that turn, because they might scatter and die horribly, and that's just another kick me sign. And of course, don't just put them on the table and run them forward. Normal Terminators will attract las cannon rounds, they will attack plasma cannon rounds or other nasty shots and die. These guys need to be in a Land Raider or a Storm Raven, or they need to deep strike far right, far left. So Terminators aren't all that bad if you remember the correct deployment options. Stick a cyclo missile launcher on them and leave them at the back, or deep strike them to the far flanks. Other rules that you must remember when you bring normal Terminators is target priority, target selection. It's tempting to think that these guys take on all comers, but they can't. They are very specialized at killing certain things. What are the best targets to throw them at? The very best targets to throw them at is vehicles, because with their power fists they will wreck face against pretty much any kind of tank, apart from Land Raiders, unless you get your chain fist on them, but they'll pretty much wreck face against any kind of vehicle, and walkers. They will eat through. Even a dreadnought fighting these guys will have 5 attacks, 2 or 3 hits, probably going to get 2 or 3 wounds. Then you've got a chance of saving 1 of those wounds or 2 of those wounds with the 5 up invulnerable save. And then the remaining fists, always kill this guy first, and then the remaining fists will punch back and should wreck a dreadnought. Ironclads might better take it, but most walkers, they will make their way through no problem. Knights, Imperial Knights, they can kill them as well. Imperial Knights only armor 13 at the front. A mass charge of Terminators, assuming that you've tickled an Imperial Knight beforehand and taken a couple of wounds off of them. These guys can kill Imperial Knights. Tau monstrous creatures, they will murder, but most things murder Tau monstrous creatures in close combat. And then any non-specialist infantry, any type of infantry that hasn't got AP2 shots or isn't particularly good in close combat, anything weaker than them is what I'm saying. So target selection with these guys is key. Aim for the vehicles, aim for the walkers and knights and non-specialist infantry, and if you're deploying them correctly, you should be able to chase them down and hit them. Worst things to throw them up against are demons. Demons will eat these guys for lunch, particularly with iron arms, big niggas, big bugs, basically big monstrous creatures that are not Tau, will make their way through Terminators. So you should avoid the big bugs and the big guys. And the other thing you should, of course, avoid with Terminators is your tar pits. A horde of 30 orc boys will slow these guys down and could potentially, with their hidden power fist in there, the knob with a power fist, can slow these guys down or decimate them. A big blob of guardsmen can slow these guys up. Any big blobs, they don't want to be tied down. So just to be clear, I'm not saying that Terminators are terribly competitive. You won't see them in very many tournament lists. You won't see them in any tournament lists. And points for points, they're probably a bit too expensive. But I am saying that there is a place for them in friendly games, in beer and pretzel games. And I'm also reminding you that there is a very specific way you want to play these guys. You want to think about deployment, and you want to think about their targets. If you deploy them correctly, and if you go after the right targets, they will smash face. If you run them up the center of the board, they are going to die. But most of all, the main reason for taking them, apart from doing your Arnold Schwarzenegger impressions, Terminator, get to the chopper, the main reason for bringing them, to my mind, is because they just look so cool. I like Terminators. And in most games, or in a lot of games with the 13th, you'll see a unit of 5 of these guys coming out of a Storm Raven, or hanging around in the backfield with this guy being very, very annoying all game. So what I'm saying is, if Games Workshop released a t-shirt and on it said Terminators, they're not as bad as you think they are, I would buy that t-shirt, because they're not as bad as you think they are. Lots of different ways to run them. Stick them in a Land Raider, stick them in a Storm Raven, or you can deep strike them. You add them to your list at the beginning of a game, and depending on what your opponent's brought, and depending on the game type, and depending on a number of other factors, they can deploy either on the table, deep striking in. You can stick them in a drop pod if you have one spare as a fast attack choice. You can buy a Land Raider as a dedicated transport. They are pretty cool, and they look pretty cool. So I'm bringing Terminators back, and I suggest you guys do the same. Anyway, let's see how well they do against a humble tactical Marine squad. Let's bring on the Crash Test Marines. So let's see how well a 205-point Terminator squad fares against a 200-point Space Marine tactical squad. Las Cannon, Sergeant Slap with his Power Fist, he's a veteran sergeant, and Ernie with his Flamer. And just to see how good they are, I'll let the tactical squad fire first. Let's assume Ernie with his Flamer manages to cover all 5 of them. And that's a strength 4 flamer, wounding on force. There we go. That's 3 wounds straight away. 2 up save on the Terminators. And they tank it. Let's fire the las cannon at him. Let's see if Lucky Strike can hit anything. Naturally, I've put the sergeant at the front because I want to keep my fists alive. And Lucky Strike, of course, he misses. And then we've got 16 bolter shots coming in. Let me grab some dice. Alright, 16 bolter rounds. Hitting on 3s. That seems to be pretty good to me. Yeah, it's pretty good shooting. These guys are strength 4 versus toughness 4. So we're going to be wounding on 4s. Right. Quite a lot of wounds, it would appear. The Crash Test Marines are on form today. They got 7 wounds there. One of these Terminators should buy it. So Terminators have a 2 up save. Wow. Alright, take back everything I said. Terminators suck. And the Crash Test Marines have just scored their greatest victory on the history of Deployment Zone so far. Mind you, if you roll 5 1s and you're a knight or a wraith knight away, if you roll 5 1s, you're going to kill, for your saves, you're going to kill everything, including 5 Terminators. But well done, boys. I'm not deleting this. You deserve this awesome victory. But let's stand them back up again and see what the Terminators can do against the Crash Test Marines if they go first. Okay, Terminators unloading against the Crash Test Marines as if the last thing never happened. Stormbotters hitting on 3s. And see, they're not as good as the Crash Test Marines. They only got 3 hits. Wounding on 4s. 2 wounds. And how many die? 1 dies. You see, Stormbolters don't cut it. Assault Terminators are not as shooty as you think they are. However, Cyclone Missile Launcher, obviously doing the crack missiles, and they hit on 3s. 1 hit. Strength 8. AP 3. Doesn't wound. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, they're now, after shooting, they're going to declare a charge. So the Crash Test Marines get to Overwatch. Alright, Crash Test Marines overwatching, hitting on 6s with bolter fire. 1 hit. Wounds on a 4. Doesn't wound. Ernie with his flamer, Wall of Death, gets 2 hits. Strength 4. He gets a wound. Is another Terminator going to die straight away? No. 2 up save, manages to hold fire. And can Lucky Strike hit with his las cannon? No. So no wounds caused on Overwatch. The Terminators then charge. 5-inch charge will do it. Here we are after the pile-in moves. Now, the Sergeant with his power sword will issue a challenge. If he doesn't accept, then I don't get any strength 8 power fist attacks back in. So he has to accept. So we'll swap these guys out and hope that he misses with his power sword. So Sergeant Slap can slap him back in the face. We'll do that assault last. Let's hit with the remaining Space Marines. There'll be 9 attacks back against the Terminators. So 9 attacks, hitting on 4s at initiative 4. And we get quite a few hits there. That's 5 hits. They're going to be wounded on 4s. 2 wounds. And let's see if I roll Snake Eyes again and kill a couple of Terminators. No, the Terminators are still alive. History has not repeated himself, and this video is not entirely pointless. So that's the initiative 4 attacks, and then the Sergeant, of course, goes at initiative 4 as well, and he'll hit on 4s. What's the other one? That's 2 hits at strength 4. That's 1 wound. Unfortunately, Sergeant Slap has bought it. Then we get initiative 1 pile in, and they're all snugly all ready. So then we get a bunch of power fist attacks in on the Crash Test Marines. 12 strength 8 attacks. That is awful. That's only 3 hits. 3 hits. Strength 8. Kills on 2s. And 3 more die. Let's take these 3 away. That means the Crash Test Marines lost that combat by 4. Sergeant Slap is dead as well, so that's leadership 8. -4, leadership 4 to hang in there. And they're going to run away. Terminators cannot Overwatch, cannot sweep in advance, so they will automatically fall back 5 inches. And then the Terminators regroup 1 inch. And now it's the Crash Test Marines' turn to shoot them back before they get charged one more time. Or I could move them and try and hide them, but let's face it, the Terminators are probably going to catch them. So let's fire again. There's 4 bot guys remaining and they hit on 3s. They're doing well. And they're wounded on 4s. Okay, maybe not so well, only 2 wounds. And 2 up saves. Still no Terminators by it. So maybe that first round of dice rolling I show you was just an aberration. We shall see, because now we have a flamer going in there. Obviously I'm choosing to fire as many guns as I can at these guys and not bolt pistol them and charge in and try and punch them because they have power fists. Trying to do that massed small arms fire we hear about versus Terminators, which worked earlier. Anyway, las cannon. Lucky Strike is not so lucky today. He misses. Flamer is going to hit, let's say 3. Ernie hits 3 of them, wounding on 4s. That's 2 wounds. Can Ernie take out the Sergeant? 2 up save. Still no Terminators die. So those fired back at these didn't do anything. Now the Terminators one more time will shoot back before they charge the Crash Test Marines. We have 4 Stormbolters, which are 8 shots in total, and these hit on 3s, and I only get 3 hits in there. Stormbolters wound on 4s, 1 wound, and a 3 up save, and the Holy Ceramic Armour manages to withstand the Stormbolter fire, and then the Cyclone Missile Launcher misses, and the Terminators will then charge, and these guys will Overwatch. So Overwatching, we have this many shots, looking for 6s, nothing. We have a las cannon. Lucky Strike hits on Overwatch, wounds on a 2. He wounds. Terminator has a 5 up invulnerable save. And he takes out the Sergeant as he tries to come wheeling in there. Well done, chap, well done. And now Ernie with his Wall of Death Flamer. Ernie gets 1 hit, which wounds on a 4. Which wounds? Can Ernie kill someone? No. Terminator armor stands firm. Terminators make a charge. And they're in again. So, before all these power fists get to strike first, there'll be 5 attacks coming in from the Crash Test Marines. Crash Test Marines have 5 attacks, and they hit on 4s. And I got 3 hits. And they wound on 4s. And I get 1 wound. And the Terminators get 2 up save. Saved again. I think the Crash Test Marines could be in trouble this time. Last time it was an awful round of shooting from awful round of assaults, but this time maybe they'll get some more hits in. So the 4 Terminators have 12 power fist attacks and they hit on 4s. And that looks more statistical, unlike rolling 5 1s. That looks much more statistically average. 6 hits. If I get 5 2-ups here, the Crash Test Marines are dead. I get 6, so they murderate everyone. And they lost a Terminator in that second round of combat. So we can say that if Terminators go first, then Tactical Marines are in trouble. And they might only lose 1 of their numbers, and we can say that if Terminators go second and get shot at by a unit of Tactical Marines, then every single one of them will die instantly. Ultimately, I'm very pleased with those rounds of combat, what we were able to see there, because it shows you both the strengths and weaknesses of Terminators. The weaknesses are, if you roll a bunch of 1s, then it doesn't matter what you're doing with your Terminators, they're all going to die, as they did. But it also showed in the second round of combat a much more statistically average type of combat. This is 205 points versus a 200 point non-specialized unit, as I mentioned, non-monstrous creature or demon unit. It's particularly the sort of unit that you want to throw Terminators in against, and As you can see, with only losing one of their number, who is nearly always a sergeant, always put them at the front, always accept challenges. It shows you that they will murder their way through the unit that you point them at if you don't roll a bunch of ones. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Deployment Zone. I particularly enjoyed watching the Crash Test Marines score their biggest victory on camera. Thank you very much for watching, and happy wargaming.